Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. Please note that you're able to provide public comment. Please register by sending an email to ocpc@seattle.gov with public comment in the subject line. We will also allow community members attending by phone to register for public comment by voice. So for those wishing to do so at the beginning of the public comment period, when prompted, please unmute yourself and say your name to register. Speakers must be registered in order to be recognized by the chair. If you're unable to attend the remote meeting, again, please submit written comments to the Community Police Commission at ocpc@seattle.
Please leave your message for 2.
All right. The Seattle Community Police Commission acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Duwamish people, past and present. With humility, we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors and lifts up these tribes, and we hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationships with urban Native people and all Coast Salish tribes.
Recording in progress.
I am going to go ahead and take attendance. As soon as I get it pulled back up. Scott Bachler. Prachi.
Present.
Good morning. Suzette.
Present.
Colleen. Austin.
Present.
Reverend Hunter.
Present.
Tasha.
Here.
Asha. Officer Mullins. Erica.
She's out sick today.
Okay, thank you. Eilena. Joseph. And Catherine had a work priority and unfortunately was not able to attend the meeting this morning. So Catherine is excused. And then I'll turn the meeting over to co-chairs. Thank you.
It's like maybe Reverend Walden dropped off. I don't know, Emily, can you see if Reverend Walden's in the waiting room?
We're gonna promote her back to panelist. Yeah, she's rejoining now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. So Randy just took attendance, so now we're at the part of the agenda of reviewing and the agenda and approving the minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'll get to that right now then. Thank you. I had a problem with my system here.
No worries.
All righty. Okay, so here we're going to write in. All right, so we're going to ask you to after you've reviewed the minutes, we would need a motion to wait a minute. Okay, we're going to do the minutes first and then the agenda. Okay, so we can ask for a motion to approve the minutes, please, from the last meeting. Is there a motion?
All motion to approve.
Second.
All right. If there's no discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 All right, sounds like the motion carries. All righty. The next item on the agenda would be the agenda for the day, and we would need, as it stands right now, we'd need a motion to amend the agenda. So I step away from the chair. There's an item that came in after we had posted the agenda, and we'd like to get that item on the agenda today. And I think it was sent around earlier this morning. And that item is that there is a communication from Converge Media to OPA about a complaint that was filed and had not been posted as completed. And so we want to be able to add that to the agenda so we can send a letter and ask and inquire about the complaint that has been finished probably since the fall of 2021. So anyway, I'd like to make a motion to agenda minutes to add this communication to our agenda for an action item. And I need a second on that one.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. I step back to the chair. It's been properly a motion and second, and then I'd ask for the question. All in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, then. Thank you so much. So it's so we've added that item to the agenda. Okay. Thank you. So I'm having a problem pulling up the next thing that I'm supposed to do here. All righty. All right, the next item on the agenda is for the action item follow-up to the Ethics and Election Committee. And was there any questions around that, Brandy, that we should be discussing on this piece?
Thanks, Reverend Walden. No, Wayne Barrett promised that we would get a brochure that outlines the processes for their office, and that was provided in supplemental material that went out to commissioners. I do know that there was a question of us having some more familiarity with the process, and that would be something that we would track and try to follow and see what potential next steps could be for us as a commission. But the predetermined outcome at that particular meeting was providing that brochure, and it was sent around.
I do actually have one question related to this, but not for the ethics folks. I'm curious what I just don't know enough about what the record keeping requirements for OIG are, because this whistleblower complaint did talk about failing to keep meeting minutes and things like that. And I don't know what they're legally required to keep, but it certainly, and so I'd like more familiarity with what they're legally required to keep, because obviously if they're not keeping legally required records, that doesn't, it sounds like based on answers to our questions that the ethics guy gave, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. I don't mean to be disrespectful. Wayne Barrett, I think it was, that Mr. Barrett gave at our last meeting. It doesn't sound as if the ethics office would go investigate a city office for failing to keep legally required records. But if they're not keeping legally required records, then I think that's something we should be concerned about and the city council should be concerned about. I'd just like more clarity on if that's even happening.
I think that's a good question, and I think that we would probably need to get some more information about that. I don't know where the public records requests come in at, or what happens under public records for an agency that takes in confidential information and do investigative reporting. So that's something that we really can't say that we know about, because we don't know how the law works for them and that type of stuff. That's something to actually, and maybe you might want to help with that. Maybe you might want to help with that and research and see how we can see what the law says and see what's available and see go back and see how they're structured. And so that would be that would be something that I think that you might be able to take a lead on that and be able to help us with that. How's that, Austin?
Sure, Nolan, I could give that a shot. I'll get with the staff and see what they know, and we can take it from there.
All right. Thank you for that, though. That's a great idea. Appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. All right. I think next is public comment. If it's and I have to pull that up. I'm usually the person that I have not been chairing meetings for a while, because Catherine has done such a good job. Aren't we missing Catherine today?
Yeah, Reverend Walden, I can take over for public comment if that's okay.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and do that then, please? Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, so before we go in, is there anybody who would like to register by voice vote? Okay, so we have one person registered for public comment today, and that is Dr. Howard Gale. So give me 1 second. Okay, Dr. Gale, can you talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, yep, give me just 1 second. I'll pull up the timer for you. Okay, Dr. Gale, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. It's now been over 6 months since journalist Carolyn Bick at the South Seattle Emerald first uncovered evidence of corruption and collusion with Seattle's supposedly independent police accountability bodies, the OPA and the OIG, and their continuing failure to properly investigate police abuse. Since then, Bick has written 9 additional articles revealing the inner workings of a self-serving system, with the last article just a few weeks ago in December revealing that no city agencies, including the City Council and the Community Police Commission, have taken any steps to launch an independent investigation of the shocking corruption and failure. Asking questions already asked and answered in Bick's investigative work does not count as an investigation. It is simply a distraction to buy time and hope folks forget. It is an insult to the community. In this new year, we will face major challenges concerning hiring a new police chief, negotiating a new police union contract, and developing new policing policies. But none of that will matter, for without accountability, why would an officer follow commands or respect policy when there is no consequence to bad behavior? How can any of that matter when we stumble blindly into the future, ignoring that all 31 SPD killings over the last 11 years have been deemed lawful and proper by accountability bodies now known to be corrupt, and so many SPD officers have escaped accountability for the abuse and violence unleashed on Seattleites in 2020. We cannot fix a system that has not only so badly failed us, but perhaps more worrisome, has managed to prove completely resistant to change or accountability. I would invite folks to finally embrace the critical need for a police accountability system that provides full civilian community control over police policy, police misconduct investigations, and police discipline, as so many other cities have done in the United States post George Floyd. Go to seattlestop.org to find out how, seattlestop.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gale, and that is the end of public comment.
Okay, at this time, if there's any commissioner that had something substance to say and want to have something to, as Dr. Gale has made his continuing statement about the accountability partners. So also, I'd just like to say that the CPC got new investigations and he knows that. So that's fine. So if anyone else like to have any commentary or any statements around what Dr. Gale has presented as he continues to hammer every time.
I am curious about where the city council is currently on this. I think that's something that would be worth asking Mr. Aldrich about.
Okay, so I think that he's present today, so that might be a question that could be asked him. All right, is there any other comments as related to Dr. Gale, who comes every time? All right. All righty. Let's see here. What's next here on the agenda? All righty. We will talk about the 2022 elections. And I don't know if we have as of yesterday, we didn't have any names for the slate, and so I'm here to encourage and to ask people to consider stepping up to be co-chairs. It is a community, as Mr. Gale continues to talk about the community, it is a community police commission, and part of that structure is to have leadership by the community, by co-chairs, and in tangent with the with staff and with the ED, with our executive director. And so anyway, I know that we have lots of people here who are interested and making this to be the best community police commission there is in the nation. And so there's still opportunity to do that. And so I encourage you to think about it and to put a slate together, because the election is next time. It's the next it's the next meeting, and it's coming up. It's coming up upon us. And just think, we made it through 2021 with COVID. We met all the time, So we're safe, and I think that we can continue. So I'm just and asking, and I think that the other thing that we talked with the ED about yesterday in the co-chair check-in was, how can we maybe design a way to be able to bring new commissioners when they come on to talk about the possibility of leadership, because I think we have to develop, and so maybe that's what we haven't done in the past, because we've had people who were willing to step up. So so what we want to do is to create a pathway to leadership, not only to be part of the work groups, but also to be a co-chair. I mean, and to take the helm of that. So anyway, I'm just going to open the floor and see if anyone has any questions. About this exciting possibility. I mean, it's so exciting. This is a new year, auspicious year. I mean, COVID might just go away. We might get to meet in person. So unlimited possibilities for 2022. So anyway, can I answer any great questions, since I am the only one that's been here since 2013? So as we kind of get some energy around this. Is there any questions? I know we're going to have some questions. Just one little question, maybe. Let me see who's here today. Let me just see who I could call on to see if it's somebody that I can ask a question to. All righty. Let's see. I think I could ask Natasha a question. Natasha, would you consider leadership?
I think it's just Tasha. No, nah.
Tasha. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hey, I better get that right. If you want to talk to someone about leadership, you better call the name right. Tasha, thank you. Yeah.
But thank you for calling on me. I responded to an email yesterday that I will not be able to accept a co-chair position at this time due to my my job change, and mostly it's the responsibilities in my job. So I'm on a steep learning curve right now as I increase my responsibilities, and I would not be able to take on anything else right at this moment.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your honesty, and thank you for your participation and being a commissioner. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right. But Pastor Hunter, would you consider?
I already have two jobs. And from what I have observed in the workings of the commission, that this is pretty close to another job full time. And so I actually don't believe I have the bandwidth to take on what I consider the enormous responsibility in leading the CPC. I know that there have been 3 co-chairs in the past, and perhaps that helps lessen the load. But my experience thus far in being on the CPC is that there's just a lot of work to do. And I actually do not think at this point, with the 2 jobs and family that I have, that I have the bandwidth to be one of the co-chairs at this time.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I mean, it's all good about being honest at times. It looks like a lot of work, but sometimes it's not as much, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, we absolutely have fun, and Douglas can attach that we've had some fun days that we've been working together. So it does go work better with 3, that's for sure. And I think that there's some I've been some conversation on how we can maybe lessen some of the work of the community of the co-chairs, and so that's going to be in discussion. Thank you so much for you. Thank you for being a commissioner, though. Number one, we thank all of you for saying yes. And it does come with a lot of responsibility. And I think that maybe sometimes maybe the appointing authorities didn't always to let people know how much work it is. I mean, and we went from 15 to 21 because we thought we'd have more commissioners to help with the work. And that really hasn't panned out as much, but we really did. We were really excited by going from 15 to 21 because with all the possibilities that we could be working in, we were just really excited about that. So it's not too late though. You know, hope still springs eternal, even though it's not spring yet. But you know, so all right. Austin, did you have your hand up? Did you want to make a comment?
No, I'm good, Reverend Walden. I appreciate that, but that was an involuntary reflex.
Are you sure?
No, I did put my hand up when you were talking to Reverend Hunter because I think she'd be fantastic. But of course, we have to respect her.
Yeah, thank you. I think she'd be awesome at it too. You know, so. Anyway, well, I'll continue to talk to people, you know, and reach out and see, and continue to do that. So, I mean, because I know that somebody's going to be available to say, yes, that's how the world is. Somebody always says yes, you know, I mean, to a greater, someone always says yes to the greater good. So anyway, thank you for that. And we'll report next at the next meeting. And then next item is the Cpc Legislative Priorities. And I'm going to let Brandy kind of refresh my memory on that piece because I had a birthday yesterday, so you know I'm not coherent. What can I say? I'm just you know I love birthdays, and so I'm not quite here yet. And so anyway, that's okay. I love birthdays, so I'm still happy from yesterday, although today is somebody else's birthday. All right, Director Grant, could you kind of help me with that one, or either Douglas?
Absolutely. We're gonna turn it over to Nia Franco, our senior policy analyst, and she's gonna go over the work that they've been doing in the state legislative agenda work group.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. We put together a small PowerPoint, and I know you all have already received the document in your packet of materials. So I just put together a small PowerPoint that kind of goes over, one, what the priorities are, two, a small overview of what the legislative process is, and three, what our role has been and what we're looking forward to having our role expand to include in the legislative session. Okay. All right. So first, just a small overview of the legislative process. So right now, the legislative session is kind of set up in two parts. It's a biennium, so it covers 2 years. So the first legislative session for this biennium was in 2021, and that went on for 105 days. And now we are in the second legislative session, so that will be 60 days. So essentially what happens with legislation is that ahead of the session, you can, representatives and senators will pre-file bills or introduce legislation. So any bill that has been pre-filed up to a month before the start of the session will be introduced on the date when the session starts. And for this session, it will be January 10th. After legislation has been introduced, there'll be committee action. So the different pieces of legislation will be assigned to different committees. They'll have hearings in the committees, and the committees will vote to either advance the legislation to the next phase, which is going to the Rules Committee. And obviously in that committee action time, they'll switch houses. So if it started in the House, it'll go to the Senate. If it started in the Senate, it will go to the House. And the Rules Committee is where there will be discussions on amendments. And from there, you'll have that'll be considered the first reading. The second reading and the third reading are what happened. There's more discussion. And after the third reading, if the bills make it to that point, there will be governor action, which is when the governor will sign the bill into law. So what our role has been in the process is last year was our first chance at actually being really involved in the legislative session. So we created a list of legislative priorities. We will finalize these priorities like in our public meeting. So that's when you all will have your vote. Then we will start talking about specific pieces of legislation. And at that point, last year we had the ACLU and the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability come in and talk about some of their priorities and the pieces of legislation that they were supporting. So in the next coming meetings, we'll start talking about specific pieces of legislation to support. Usually what that means for us is providing statements in support of the legislation. We had quite a few commissioners last year actually go in and give virtual testimony in support of legislation, but we also were submitting written legislation as well. And what we're also looking to do moving forward is start putting together, like doing our own coalition building and proposing legislation and supporting legislation in a stronger way. So these are the priorities that were outlined in the document you all received. So it is to allow individuals to hold officers accountable for their actions. We're looking to also prohibit traffic stops for certain traffic violations. This is a bill that was introduced close to the end of the last legislative session. We're still pushing to ban tear gas in Washington State. We're looking for statewide changes to increase police accountability. And we're looking to remove arbitration as a route of appeal for misconduct-related discipline and to remove accountability provisions from the bargaining process. We're also looking to push for a few funding measures. This is something new that we have not done previously. So we're looking for case studies on mental health response methods. So those alternative responses to if someone is experiencing mental health crisis, excuse me. We're looking for research on best practices for community-based oversight organizations. We're also looking at the police data collection process, specifically whether and to what extent an independent entity should initially collect and process information related to force and the best way to track use of force and how use of force rates are calculated. We're also looking to push for a case study on establishing a unified court system in Washington and research on methods to share outcomes with communities. And that's it. If you all have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them now. And I think Austin and I can kind of answer your questions as they come up if you have them.
I do have one brief thing to add to. Thank you, Nia. That was really good. I got some information this morning from the Washington Police Accountability Coalition, and they're a little concerned about a bill that's just been introduced, HB 1726, that they're worried that it's intended as a fix and a clarification for 1310 from last year that changed use of force standards. And they're concerned about a few provisions of that bill that would lower the requirements for use of force again from probable cause to reasonable suspicion, which is what it used to be. I haven't gotten the full details from them yet. That bill was just introduced, but so that's a potential area where these legislative priorities might change based on our meetings with the Coalition for Police Accountability folks and their final analysis of that bill and of course our analysis of that bill too. So that's one potential area where these legislative priorities might get tweaked a little bit, but that's something that I literally found out about this morning. So that's the reason that it didn't make it into this presentation.
I have a question about the second slides that you presented. There was something on there that I wanted to ask a question about, but when you took it down, could you put back the second slides you presented?
Oh, sorry. Did you mean that one or this one?
that one. I think about the research you want to do, because we haven't talked about that yet. So
Right.
you had a lot of them about different kinds of research that you were looking for. So yeah, best practice. Could you make it bigger?
Sure.
Like, for my bifocal. Mhm. Because it looked like some of this was already going to be done on the state level, especially about use of force. Look, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what was already proposed or what was already passed in the state level. So, and what is what would be the value of the case study of establishing a unified court system in Washington State, and is that our responsibility? I mean, well, how does that fall within the work that we should be doing?
I can tackle that one, Reverend Walden. That's a totally
Mhm.
understandable question,
Mhm.
because it does seem a little bit outside of our purview. But what I'm curious about, and what some other folks are curious about in police accountability spaces, is whether different types of court systems do a better job of regulating the police. Because obviously, with court systems, courts and judges play a critical role in regulating police conduct by, for example, deciding whether or not to suppress evidence that might have been collected illegally or something like that. The difference between our current court system, which isn't unified, which means it's not funded by the state, it's funded, we have a state funded court system, but we also have these little municipal courts that are locally funded. And some police reform activists have identified that as a potential weakness in the system as far as holding police accountable, because municipal courts are not as well resourced as a state-funded court system. They don't have the number of personnel. They don't have they handle a much higher caseload too for the level of funding that they do get. And so you get situations where it's more difficult for judges to take the time to evaluate, say, how police searched somebody or stopped somebody in order to make sure that people's constitutional rights are protected. So what this research would be looking at would be whether states like California or others that have a unified state-funded court system and don't have municipal courts, whether those are more effective at regulating police conduct. Because I don't know the answer. I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that. So it was something that we discussed in our meeting as potentially worth having a funding proviso from the legislature to fund research to study that.
Okay, thank you. And the other one is the police data, because I thought the bill passed for the state to set up the independent to be able to collect the data around as it relate to the use of force. That was one of the bills that passed, wasn't it?
I believe that there was a bill passed to, what this is more focused at is not like having an independent entity that kind of looks at the data after it's been collected by law enforcement agencies, but more looking at a ground level. Because of course the issue that we run into a lot is that public safety data, the primary source for a lot of that data is the police departments themselves. And so the question of whether we should be relying primarily on police departments to collect a lot of this data, and which they then potentially provide to independent auditors and so on, or whether there's value in creating some kind of independent group that collects a lot of this public safety data, and then disseminates it so that you don't have all of that data first being filtered through police departments.
Okay, I guess I misunderstood it, because I thought the law that the state passed and signed was that the AG's office was going to be involved with that statewide. And since the law is only passed 1 year, it takes more than 1 year to get a law up and going. And so I just was trying to figure out how that works, how it's going to be working with what the state is already getting ready to do. So
sure, I think that makes sense. I think what we're looking at is more just like best practices in other jurisdictions and things like that. Are there places that have more independent sources of public safety data And if so, how do they do that? And does that work? That kind of thing.
Okay, then, that's fine. I just was, I mean, because it sounds like we're just trying to duplicate work that's already been done. So
Sure.
that's
sure, sure.
fine. I was just trying to, make sure, because as it stands right now, we're gonna need all hands on deck to get everything done. So,
Yeah, no, thank you for
That's right.
clarifying. Yeah, we definitely don't want to reinvent the wheel. Absolutely.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, I mean, it looks like we might need to bifurcate this, though, because what can we do right now in Olympia for what's going to be happening? Because the study might be something that we can do maybe by, by April or sometime in March. But we're definitely going to have to take it. I want to vote on the recommendations on what the priorities should be. So, Nia, would you just want to briefly talk about what they were again, so we can so we can move the agenda forward as far as, yeah, okay, all right.
And I have a question about the first one. Is that, does this have to do with qualified immunity, or is this something different? Okay.
Yeah, this has to do with there's a bill that's been introduced. I'm blanking on the number right now. Nia might be able to help me. That would create a private right of action for people to bring claims against officers for violating their civil rights under the state constitution. Because the thing about qualified immunity is that it's primarily a federal doctrine that prevents people from pursuing and vindicating their rights in court under the federal constitution. And right now, there currently isn't any legal mechanism for people to sue officers for violating their civil rights under the state constitution, because states have to allow themselves to be sued. And so this would create an avenue for people to bring, this bill would create an avenue for people to bring suits under the state constitution against officers who violate their civil rights. And there's reasons why that would be good too, because, for example, Washington's version of the Fourth Amendment, which is preventing illegal searches and seizures, is much stronger than the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is pretty weak, and Washington's equivalent constitutional provision is stronger. So this private right of action under the state constitution would potentially open up new avenues for individuals to protect their own rights in court, provided, of course, that they could obtain legal representation, which is always potentially difficult and expensive. But it's another avenue that people can use.
And qualified immunity, I mean, it has to do with just civil lawsuits, right, rather than criminal. Right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's a way. The basic idea behind qualified immunity, I'll be super brief, and I'm probably telling you stuff you already know, but the basic idea is that government officials shouldn't be held financially liable for just the day-to-day decisions that they have to make as part of doing their job. The idea being that if they're worried about that, they'll never be able to get anything done. But from there, it's kind of mutated into an incredibly high barrier that prevents people who were pretty obviously harmed from bringing a civil lawsuit for monetary damages against specific civil servants, police officers in this case.
Thank you. And then my last question. So are these priorities, are these all consistent with the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability, or are any of these like unique ones that are just ours, or are we kind of like following what the statewide advocates are doing?
I think Nia could also speak to this, but to my knowledge, we're tracking pretty closely with the Washington Coalition of Police Accountability, because and we've talked about this in our meetings. Me and Esther Lucero and Nia, we've all agreed that we want the CPC to be a good coalition partner and to be, as Reverend Walton talked about, we don't want to be doing stuff that's already being done. We don't want to be repeating stuff or duplicating effort. The coalition folks are, they represent a really broad swath of the community, and they are very active and have a pretty solid amount of expertise. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is pretty consistent with what they're doing. And Nia, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
You covered it perfectly.
All right.
And the statewide changes to it, increased accountability, is that representing some of the same laws that didn't get through last year? Some of these, because I know there's a lot of things that didn't get through, but I mean, we have to really say that, I mean, contrary to what some people might think, Washington State had really did sign a few laws and took a bold step toward police accountability this past session. So looking forward for that to happen again. So, okay.
Yeah, it's that is specifically about continuing to push for some of the bills that didn't make it through in the last session.
Okay, and I know didn't make it through last time was also it didn't actually get on the table because of a lot of objection was to removing the arbitration as a route of appeal. I mean, I think that had a lot of pushback on that one, right? And also removing removing accountability provision from bargaining, and I think a lot of that came from Seattle, the pushback on that piece, and so I think that those are really things that we need to really be concerned about, because if you could get statewide law as it pertains to bargaining, I mean, because I mean everybody has a right to bargain. I mean this is America, you know, and that's just how it is. Even from Martin Luther King gave his life for the people there in Memphis. So bargaining is part of the American fabric, but bargaining away police accountability is what we're talking about. So anyway, thank you for that update. I mean, for bringing it more clearly. So we'll just ask if there's any more questions on this, and then if not, then I'd like to bifurcate it and make sure that we can vote on this first and then come back and then do the other one and bring the other ones back at another time, if that's okay. Since we'll be talking about research, and this right now is legislature start. I think it starts in a couple of weeks. Actually, next week, I believe, is the first day of the session. Is that correct?
Yes, the first day of session is January 10th,
Right.
which is next Monday, I believe.
Next Monday. Okay.
And bifurcating makes perfect sense to me, Reverend Walden. We, as Esther Lucero and Nia and I discussed in our last meeting, that since the session is so close, a lot of these sort of funding provisos are probably going to be something that if they do get funded, they'll probably get funded next session at this point. So it totally makes sense to kind of put those on the back burner a little bit, because and also since this is something, as you noted, that the commission hasn't done before, it makes sense to have some more conversations about that to me. So.
All right, then we would need someone to make a motion.
I do see, Reverend Walden, that Mr. Ward has his hand raised, so I don't want to make sure that
because I can't see him. Okay, thank you. I think he's. Ron, did you have a question? Yeah, you have a question, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Ward. Yes, Mr. Ward.
Austin and Nia, in that this is a short session, how realistic is it to expect that substantive legislation would get through with regard to bargaining provisions, things like private rights of action, and the arbitration process? Is this going to be a session where there's a realistic chance of promulgating that type of legislation, or is the intent and focus more to keep the momentum going for the next session, which will be a long session, and where there might be a greater probability of doing so?
That's a great question. I think it's a little bit of A and a little bit of B. I think that the advocates behind the private right of action are going to push pretty hard for that particular bill. I think there might be some possibility that becomes substantive law. I think the bargaining stuff, as Reverend Walden noted, there's a lot of that's a complicated issue that requires a lot of negotiation and a lot of thinking. And also, I know that some of the bills relating to that from the last session are not going to be carried forward in their previous form. And so that's probably an area where it will take a longer session, and probably many longer sessions if we're being realistic to work out a compromise that that labor is comfortable with, and that police advocates are comfortable with, and that the community is comfortable with. So yeah, I think that's a situation where you correctly identified. It's really more about keeping the issue alive and recognizing that this is something that's very important to a lot of members of the community, as Reverend Walden just noted. But of course, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So this is not, we're not going to, and we're certainly not, we don't want to make it seem as though we're going to change one of the most complicated areas of state politics in a short legislative session. I totally appreciate that question.
Thank you. My second point is, Nia, this is an excellent PowerPoint. It was not included in the materials I received this morning, so I'd like to ask the officers and the executive director, may I receive a copy of this after the meeting today, of the PowerPoint?
Yes, we'll make sure it gets out.
Thank you so much.
Right, thank you. Brandy, could you give an update about the count for quorum? I mean, are we at quorum or not? I mean, otherwise we need to really make a real decision here, what the quorum is. And so do you have that information?
We would need 10, Reverend Walden.
And what is our attendance today?
Well, we're not at 10. I want to say we're right at 8.
Yeah, I believe we have 8.
Okay, well then it's that force, then our meeting here today is not at quorum. And so we cannot vote. The only thing that we can continue today is that we can have some updates, but we're not able to, according to our rules, we have to have a quorum meeting to be a justified meeting and a legal meeting. And so so this meeting today will not count as it will be more of a discussion. And so if any action items that we had planned to take today, including the letter that we sent around, and we want to apologize that this is the first time that we went into a meeting thinking that we had quorum and we did not. So that's not anything that we've done. We've had 2 meetings since 2013 that we did not make quorum, and we knew that in the beginning. So this is be our 3rd meeting since 2013 that we will not have a quorum meeting. So what my our legal is out today. So from my recollection of this, the things that we can do, we can have the report. I mean, we can have the updates. We could probably do that. But the people who from the other departments who for an update, we can ask questions about that update and those kinds of things. But all of the other pertinent issues, especially around the letter that we wanted to get out today to ask the OPA why they had not released a complaint that they had finished since the fall. And so duly noted that was one of the things that we really wanted to get the vote out today. So in that regards, I'll pass that back over to Douglas. I think that since we're not able to do any other voting today, that we would just go ahead and finish up the agenda as far as the people, as far as the other agencies that appear to like to give an update. And that would be my rule, my read on Robert Rules of Order. So anyway, without legal, I think that this is the legal way that we can travel today.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. Do you want to discuss the letter still, or do you want to just table it?
Well, I mean, we can discuss the letter, but we can't take any action on it. I mean, the letter had come to the commission from Converge Media that a complaint that had been filed had not been. It had been filed almost a year ago, and I was wondering why it has not had any resolution. And the communication said that the IG was still waiting to sign off on it. Well, the IG sent it back and said that they had already signed off on it in September. And so Mr. Meyerberg did say that he was going to release the report by the end of the year. Since he did not release the report at the end of the year, Converge Media sent an email out to all the city, including the new mayor, stating that that since he did not, did not wonder why did he not put it out as he said it was going to do. So anyway, and so our response was going to be to write a letter to inquire to OPA why that letter has not. I mean, why the complaint, if it's finished. I mean, the IG had already signed off on it. Why was it? And so, and this was a complaint that that came to the to OPA by one of the persons who was out there and doing the chop, doing all this stuff that was going on. It was a complaint about a host of something that had happened, and they wanted to bring it to light. And so, anyway, I'm probably stumbling on it because I don't have all the details, and then it was in the letter and stuff like that. So we'll wait to see if it's going to be released or not. And then if not, then when we come back again, hopefully that we'll have quorum, that we can take some action and ask about the letter. Thank you.
I have a question. Reverend Walden, if we could put this on the agenda again for next meeting in hopes that there is a quorum, do we have a copy of that letter to review?
Yeah, it was sent out. I think the email we sent out there. I'll ask the director, Director Grant. Will we able to send it out this morning?
Oh, okay.
And Reverend Hunter, it's an email thread. It's the letter. It's not a letter itself.
Letter.
Actually,
Right.
an email that was sent to council
Okay.
leadership, and so that entire thread was emailed out to you all this morning.
Okay.
Who sent it, Director Grant? Was that
I
you?
did.
Or? Okay.
Yeah,
I
thank
can
you.
circulate it if it's not at the top of folks's, but I sent it about probably 10 or 15 minutes before the meeting started.
And what would the ask be? Like, is there an ask for us to sign on to the letter or make a statement or?
Well, it would have been an ask for us to vote to be able to give the and the co-chairs the permission to go ahead and write a letter of inquiry to find out why this complaint that was finished and signed off on by the IG's office, why it was not released released yet, and that's what we would be asking. And hopefully, who knows, this might be a new issue by the next time we meet. And then I'll ask would be, why did he sit on it so long? Why did the office sit on it so long? That's what would happen the next time if it comes out anytime soon, and we get some get to understand what it was or what the complaint was totally about. Then I think that the next meeting that we should really be able to have a even more clarified statement after the complaint is posted and released. Yeah,
Makes sense. And Brandy, I don't know if we do have a copy of the actual letter, but it seems like it would be helpful to share the actual letter with the full commission, because I think you're saying that like the thread was forwarded, but not the letter.
It's not a letter. He sent an email
Oh, okay.
to the leadership. Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's in letter form. It's in the body of an email. It's not an actual document that's like a Word document that was attached. So that's why you all were forwarded the thread that we received. We received a thread, not a letter.
Thank you.
But you might want to read just the latest that you received, because I was glad to see that the CPC was copied on it. So you might just want to read the just that part of what you got there. I think you shared that we got that this earlier this week.
Yes. Let me see if I can if I pull it up, it would show all of my emails. So give me just a second. Yes, we had received, well, the email was originally sent to Inspector General Judge, and OPA. And journalist Salisbury was just inquiring about OPA's, the 2020 OPA 0749 incident and case, just wanting to basically know why the determination for why it had taken so long and when that case was going to be concluded and the information was going to be released to the public. And he inquired about it in early part of December, mid-December, December 18th. And there's just been correspondence that's went back and forth between the offices. I don't want to speak out of turn, but not Inspector General, Director Meyerberg just basically responded and said that they were working on finishing up the case due to holidays and, backlog and things of that nature. They just hadn't had an opportunity to conclude it. And considering that the holidays were right around the corner and that they were working on it. And so ourselves, along with journalist Salisbury, we are also concerned about the fact that it has taken so long to conclude that case. So what we were asking today and leading this discussion, if you all have an opportunity to look through the thread, is we should also be inquiring as well about why it has taken so long, when will it be wrapped up, and how soon will that information be released to the public?
Well, if we have a representative from OPA here today, maybe we can also ask some of these questions during department updates in just a bit. But thank you, Reverend Walden, for bringing this to our attention, and it's helpful and important. So the next item on the agenda is the management action recommendations review. We can discuss but not vote. And I'll actually turn to Shailene or Nia or Brandy, if you wouldn't mind giving an update on kind of the forum that was created and sharing a little detail about that.
Sure, I can do that, but I do want to offer space for Reverend Hunter to speak on this if she feels inclined.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to start, and then Nia, if I'm missing something, please hop in. In your packet, you received a recommendation form that staff and police practices work group will use as we review the management action recommendations, the MARs from OPA. And the form at the top has basic information that will help us identify which MAR we are working on. Then there's space for a summary that we will use to describe the case. And each MAR has a recommendation from OPA. So we will list those, and then the police practices will then offer our analysis of the case and then provide our recommendations. We still have a question of who will sign the form. And then it will come back to the CPC for approval before it's sent either to SPD or OPA or others. We need more conversation on how to prioritize the MARs that we select for review and comment. Do we go with public attention and concerns? We can focus on the MARs where there has been significant public concern. It may be something new, or it could also be a recurring issue with SPD, but it's something that has the public's attention. That's one direction we could go. It could be that there are previous SPD patterns of action, maybe ineffective policing with those who have mental health issues. Maybe we just see some consistency in some of the MARs that are offered, and so we would respond to those. The other way that we could go about this are areas where we know SPD struggles. For example, with youth violence or lack of community information or engagement. So we will be reviewing the MARs. Again, OPA has already looked at the incidents and found a concern and given their recommendation. Again, SPD does not have to follow OPA's recommendations. So hopefully our support would encourage SPD to change its policies. So that's where we are. We can have conversation on which strategy to take, but we can't vote on anything today.
So Reverend Hunter pretty much covered it, but what we're hoping you all can offer is if there is a potential, like the selection criteria that we've discussed, if one feels like the direction we should take, or if anyone wants to offer an additional way that we could try to categorize which MARs we should look at.
Actually kind of like the order that it's currently laid out: public attention, concern, previous SPD patterns of practice, and then areas where we know SPD struggles. I feel like being, uplifting and being responsive to community concerns feels like probably the most important priority to me. And so, at least for me, that kind of sequence actually is a pretty good one. I was just going to ask, for myself and for other folks who might find it helpful, would Reverend Hunter or me or whoever feels comfortable, could you just kind of refresh us, what is a MAR? What does this kind of mean in practice?
Sure. So typically OPA issues MARs when they have gone through the process of beginning an investigation into police misconduct and find that there's something like within SPD policy that is the issue more than the officer's individual actions. So they will submit a MAR, and usually the recommendations are something along the lines of change this specific policy to cover whatever the issue was, or make some adjustment department systemic wide, right? And part of the reason that we're looking at MARs is because what typically happens is that a MAR is issued rather than there being some specific discipline for the officer. So we're interested in kind of seeing, what kind of cases we see MARs as the outcome in, and what that means in terms of how policing is actually executed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Well, thanks, Douglas. Yes, I think I saw. Oh, Tasha.
Yes, sorry. I was looking for my raise my hand button and just got it in. So maybe I missed this, but does MAR stand for something?
Mm-hmm.
What does MAR stand for?
Management Action Recommendation.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And lowering hand. Thank you.
You're welcome. What's also frustrating to me is that, when there is an incident and a case, and OPA gets a case, and then they have recommendations for policy changes, nothing has to be done with that. So maybe the weight of the community behind some of the recommendations might encourage SPD to change some of the policies. Yes, Reverend Walden?
Also, I think a more robust city council. I think over the years, from my experience, just looking at things, the city council sometimes exerting what they can exert. To around the recommendations, and maybe doing quarterly check-ins with the department, and see when have they implemented the recommendations? Have they done the training? To me, that's a city oversight area. So it also could be because they could control the budget. So some of these things could be maybe tied to the budget, and to say, hey, I mean, and it's a lot of training that has to be done. I mean, they got the state training, and then they have all this other training to be done, plus all the other recommendations and stuff like that. But it seems to me that that the city council can eventually come in and say, hey, you know, these are the recommendations. Because back in 2015-16, we made recommendations for them to stop using the flash bombs and all of that stuff that was used out there during the CHOP, and those recommendations was never really truly accepted, and it was no really comeback to that. But had the city council been involved with that, that's what we saw out there this past year might not have happened as much, because there would have been some follow through to see what was implemented and what now. I mean, it's a lot of recommendations, so I don't want people to think that, and a lot of them have been, but some of them, I mean, it's a lot of recommendations that we put up that the changes that the the Office of OPA has tried to, has recommended. And so, yeah, there is a weak link there, and I do think the city council can absolutely come involved and be involved in that oversight also, of the making sure that we know that whether they did it or not, or the community. And that's when I think you're right about the community. The community bringing the heat and saying, hey, why hasn't this been done? But then we have to track it, and we have everybody. We have a good policy team now to be able to track them. But it's a lot of work for them to even just track them. I mean, to be able to track all the recommendations that's been made. Thank you.
Thanks, Reverend Waldman. Certainly, our recommendations would go to City Council as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since we can't vote on anything, we
Did
will
get the what was that? That was another question about the quorum. Is there an update? I mean, is what we said is true, or did we? Or is there something else I need to ask the ED on that piece? Or
No.
Emily, because they were ones who was counting. It's hard to count on this when you're looking at it the way we're doing it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we still have not met quorum. And with both legal being out, the response that they gave me is they can follow up with us tomorrow when they're back in the office. And it still stands that we can have a discussion, but we just can't vote on anything.
Okay, well then fine. Well then, so we're just having a regular, so it's not gonna really count as a real meeting then? I mean, because that's what it says. So we can still continue to have our discussions and apologize not only for ourselves, and that actually what we would do for the next meeting, the co-chairs and we'll discuss this with the ED is to call people. That's what we've done in the past, to call people to make sure. And because Officer Mullen always comes, he might be at work today and something might come up because he always is trying to be on the phone. And stuff like that. And then for the people who have decided not to be reappointed, we can absolutely get their names off the roll. If they don't want to be reappointed, we can make sure that happens before the next meeting, so the quorum would go down, that their names would come off of, and so they won't be part of the count anymore. Because we have a few people who said they're not going to want to be reappointed. We can take care of that housekeeping bit so that next time we'll be able to have a legal meeting. Again, as one of the co-chairs, I really want to apologize for the time and the energy of all of us and the people who actually came by to Zoom in today. So, but we can finish up the discussions as much as we can. Yes, thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for the conversations. It gives us some direction on where we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we can move forward to, and thank you, Reverend Hunter, for your work on this.
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate it. So we'll move on to the next section, which is department updates. Newell, do you have an update from City Council?
Thank you, Douglas. Yes, I do. Some updates from late last year and from yesterday's first council meeting of the year. First of all, the council changed its rules late last year so that full city council meetings are now Tuesday at 2 p.m. Previously, they were Monday at 2 p.m. So just wanted to be sure everybody was aware of that.
That's
Yesterday, on the first Tuesday meeting of the city council, the council elected Deborah Juarez as council president. And consistent with that role, she proposed a committee structure where which determines which committees council members chair and what they serve on. As a result of that legislation, Councilmember Herbold will be continuing as chair of Public Safety and Human Services. So wanted to be sure that everybody was aware of that. The next step for the council is the development of a 2022 work program across those 9 committees that will be going on during coming weeks. The other update is that a new Councilmember Sarah Nelson, was sworn in yesterday, so she is now the council member in, I believe, position 9, as Councilmember Bugala's term ended. Also want to thank Felicia for sending out the notice of the upcoming community engagement meetings with the monitor and the request to share that. Councilmember Herbold will be doing that. So just wanted to thank you very much for sending such an informative summary of that. It's very easy to copy and paste all that information. Those are the only updates I had. Just wanted to apologize for not being up to date on the issue that Austin raised. I had done a little studying up on the SPD budget for this meeting, since sometimes you get asked about that, and figured that might be something that would come up. Just wanted to note that Councilor Herbold did reach out to the co-chairs about if they wanted to discuss that issue during a meeting last month. Also, one thing that she proposed during the budget discussions for 2022 was the possibility of a review of the accountability system, which is something that the city auditor suggested a number of years ago, that it might be something fruitful to do around 5 years or so into the establishment of the 3-pronged accountability system. She sought some funding for a community element, since any kind of review would probably need to have clear community involvement, and perhaps an element of self-review is what the auditor was suggesting as well. That measure did not pass, so that is something, though, that she's interested in, and certainly would be interested in discussing in the future with the CPC. So thank you.
I have a question. My question would be to the city and the city auditor. Since the judge had found that Seattle was out of compliance on the police accountability issue, and that piece has never been fully in compliance as far as the judge had said. So I'm wondering how we could be audited when we still didn't fix the accountability system that the judge said we were out of a compliance on. And so that's a real confusing issue to me, because then it was the city's responsibility to fix it, and the city never responded to the judge. And so I think if we want to fix this, we probably need to find out about that piece and to be able to move forward. Otherwise, we want to, and also I think that also in looking at things, I think the city really needs to look at what happens when you set up a new agency. I mean, because I think that we go back and look at 2013 and what happened when you set up a new agency. And I think setting up a hybrid was something totally that the city probably didn't have any real experience at. And I think that all of that needs to be taken into accountability, or in the contents where you want to do some auditing, that all the places where the city absolutely maybe didn't quite get things right either, because this had never been done before, to have agencies like us, the IG and the OPA, are all city employees. They come up under a different kind of heading, and we are a hybrid. We have city staff, we have city employees that are staffing this commission. That's community driven, and that type of thing. So they don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge to actually kind of audit something that they've never done before. So that would be my concern, and I think that all of that has to be laid out in a different way so that the city will understand their capabilities, and also the way that not in the way that we were set up, because we were actually under the legislation to be set up this way, but the city probably didn't know quite how to do that, with us being not city employees, but having a lot of say in the way that policies are made in the city. So I think all of that has to be set up and thought about. Thank you so much for letting me have a comment on that.
Thank you for those comments. Those are very informative and excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Ron, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, Newell. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Newell, is there any expectation of any sort of reassignment of council committee chairs by the new president of the council?
Well, it's legislation that is put forward by the president in general. Committee chairs who serve 1 2-year term tend to serve another 2 years. That's not fixed in stone. It's just generally what has happened in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Newell. Is there anyone here from the mayor's office? All right, then I'll turn to the monitoring team for an update.
The monitoring team has continued to work on data that forms the basis of the upcoming assessments. The monitor and I did meet with your executive director and your community outreach director on the upcoming community engagement sessions. And I have communicated with your community outreach director recently on that. I have been out of town for 14 days, out of state actually, for 14 days, 7 of those involuntarily, since the Omicron impact on airline staff shortages, particularly ground crews, precluded me from getting back into the state of Washington. I returned yesterday, and the preparations for the community engagement sessions commencing January 11th are ongoing. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Ron, and welcome back to Washington. Sorry you had those travel issues. It's been crazy.
But it was really quite a burden sitting in 60-degree sunny weather in Phoenix.
Yeah, sounds like it could be worse.
I did have one quick question for Mr. Ward. I know I asked at the last meeting, and this the holidays and everything have made it so that it's been hard to move forward on stuff. But I was curious if there'd been any progress. I know that at one of the last community engagement meetings, community members raised concerns and were curious about the methodology used to calculate use of force incidents. And so I'm curious what if there have been any movements to sort of releasing that methodology, because I certainly don't know anything about it. And I think other community members were confused as well. So just releasing the methodology used to calculate that and just helping community members understand it.
Are you talking about, can you give me just a little bit more clarification, Austin, in terms of calculating the number of incidents, personnel involved?
Personnel involved, I think, was what kind of raised the most community questions. I know that there was that percentage given for, I think, percentage of officers who use force, which was quite low. And I think there were some community members who were curious about the numerator and the denominator for that and exactly how that's calculated.
Okay, I will get to the monitor with a question today. And I anticipate I can get in touch with you through the executive director.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. Is there anyone here from DOJ?
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Brittany Sereneo from the U.S. Attorney's Office. We do not have a DOJ update this week.
Okay. Is there anyone here from OPA?
They haven't been sending folks for some time now. I feel like I don't remember the last time there was a either Director Meyerberg or somebody was at one of these meetings. And I feel like given how often we talk about them, it doesn't have to be Director Meyerberg, but at a minimum having somebody here, I think it might be worth communicating with them just about the fact that their absence is noted. I don't know, Director Grant, if you've already done that or not. So I could be speaking out of turn.
No, just to note, Director Meyerberg was on paternity leave for an extensive period of time and returned. And I know they're short-staffed, but I will be following up. And then we also sent something to just asking that if folks don't have a representative, if they could send somebody, in lieu of their absence, it would be really, really helpful because we heavily rely on those updates and being able to have that audience with them. So yes, absolutely, we have followed up, but we will continue to do so.
Yeah, that's a good point, Austin, and thank you, Brandy. Is there anyone here from SPD?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Captain Pierre Davis here. Not a whole heck of a lot to give an update on. I know the chief has mandated that each of his bureaus give their updated priorities for year 2022. And I'm sure that's going to be quite a list, especially in light of our staffing woes that we have. Also, our bureau, which is the community outreach based, we're still conducting massive community outreach to our various communities, including our youth. So if you would like more intricate information on that, please give us a buzz and we can give you as much information as we can possibly give. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Captain Davis. Any questions for Captain Davis? Okay. OAG, Lisa?
Morning, commissioners. Happy New Year, everybody.
Morning.
So updates in terms of work that we've pushed out. It was right before the holidays started, and the holidays have kind of slowed my shop down. But right before that, we had released the discipline audit, which was a pretty extensive initial look at the effectiveness of SPD's discipline process. We were required to publish a work plan on January 1st. And so that went out last week. And thanks to CPC commissioners and staff for providing input in our work plan. We will be releasing a report on persons in crisis in the next few weeks. That's in final editing right now. We have been working on traffic stops in a joint project with SPD and SDOT and a variety of community stakeholders to have SPD discontinue making in-person traffic stops of low-level, nonviolent traffic issues. We had I think the third week in December, a really large stakeholder meeting. And out of that have come a list of offenses that we're going to ask SPD to deprioritize. Right after that meeting, Director Zimbabwe was notified that he would not be continuing in SDOT. So we've got a little bit of communication to do with the new and current SDOT leadership just to make sure that we're all still on the same page, but that should be coming out fairly soon. And then with the Sentinel event review, Wave 2, we're getting ready to send the Wave 2 report to panelists for final comments and edits. And we're in the middle of Wave 3, starting to work through the Chaz Chop period. So a lot of stuff going on at OIG. That's the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Austin, you have a question?
I did have one quick question. When it comes to complaint tracking, using this complaint that Reverend Walden mentioned as an example. So I plugged that into the complaint tracker on Seattle's website, and you get just this message that says that the OPA director has classified the complaint for investigation. And I think that leads to situations like the situation we have here, where you have members of the community contacting every organization, including yours, because they don't know where this complaint is. And so when it comes to tracking something like this, I feel like transparency wise, having something that's, for lack of a better example, like the Domino's pizza tracker, where it shows you every single stage of the process and shows you exactly where it is, would be much more helpful and transparent than the thing we currently have. And so I'm curious what movement there is towards something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably an OPA question. What if anything they're doing to make their tracker more robust? I think that's a really excellent suggestion. And I think it serves two purposes, right? It also keeps the agency on track and accountable with deadlines. So I'm not really sure how to answer that in terms of OPA's processes. I think it's a really good suggestion that I can take in for OIG's processes, because we also sporadically do investigations of OPA personnel and take in other complaints. So we're in the process of developing our own. We're the new kid on the block in terms of processes. So in terms of having a presence on the web where people can, kind of in real time see what's going on with our office, I think that's a great idea.
Well, and I mean, since your office does sort of issue recommendations for how to make the entire process more transparent, is that maybe something that you could recommend?
Absolutely.
To OPA?
Oh, yes. And we do, aside from just the function of our office, it's been, the subject of a lot of discussion here, just that quality control of the investigative process itself. We do have other, functions, right, for overall systemic health of OPA and efficiency and making recommendations there. So absolutely, we had a big project working with them last year to update their policy manual, which hadn't been updated since 2016. And, off the top of my head, I can't remember if any of this was discussed there, but I thought that OPA was working on making those kinds of external facing tracking things more user friendly, more helpful, more informative. And so your point to me is, since I have systemic responsibilities for OPA, is that something I can do? The answer is yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that your suggestion is a really good one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And when it comes to quality control too, I'm curious where your office is at with that, because obviously there was a huge quality control issue in your own office with the employee that you, I can't remember if he was terminated or what ended up happening with that. But I think a lot of people in the community are curious about what you folks are doing to make sure something like that never happens again.
Sure. We've come up with a variety of internal checks with some standardized templates. We have kind of a new supervisory structure that builds in supervisor time to have quality control checks done by a supervisor. I think when the ordinance was originally published, it was envisioned that OPA review function, the case review function, was a one-person job. And I think what we've discovered over the course of the last 3 years, especially with 2020 and that huge influx of cases, is it's not in any way a one-person job to do as robust a review as we need to do. So we fairly quickly brought in an additional person to help with that function, but there's always been sort of this gap in the day-to-day function that was done historically by previously the OPA auditor, and then initially by the position that was given when the office was set up in the legislation. But that doesn't build in the other development of oversight processes of that function and quality control. So I think we're building that, and I'd be happy to sit down, with the folks in my office if you want to have a conversation about exactly what we're doing, so you can see, kind of how we operate. If you want to get walked through what that process looks like, I'd be happy to do that for you.
I would, and I think a public report would be valuable as well, because this is something that's certainly shaken public confidence. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you have had a chance to look at our annual report from last year, but in fairly significant detail lays out all of those processes, what we do, what we look at, our concurrence rates with OPA, how we get there. So there is a public report.
Well, sure, but I
If,
mean,
if the public report doesn't answer all of the questions that you have, I'd be, very interested in hearing your input and doing what I could to answer those other questions
I mean,
for
a
you and
public
for the
report
public.
to address the specific issue that was
Oh, yeah.
identified by, that's
Absolutely, yeah, yes, that will be forthcoming.
when, if you don't mind me asking.
I want a thorough investigation done. I want a thorough review done. And so I don't want it to take forever. For me, it's already taken far too long, but that really is going to depend on the external consultants, their time frame. So I can come back to you after talking with them and see if they've got some sort of time frame in mind. But I understand that the
They
tension
didn't give you
between
a
being
time frame. They didn't give you a time frame when they agreed to take on the work, even an approximate.
Well, I mean, I think what they get in there and start finding may dictate how long it does or doesn't take. So I'm happy to come back to you with more information.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
Director Judge.
Next up are CBC updates. So Reverend Walden can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have any specific co-chair updates. So ED updates.
Absolutely, thank you. Just really quickly wanted to give you all a few updates regarding some operational things. We did interviews for a temporary out-of-class assignment for a comms advisor while Jesse is working with council right now. And so we were able to narrow down some really great candidates. And so we're in the process of looking to hire for that during their assignment. Our office space, we officially completed the paperwork for assignment for the move. For a location assignment for current staff to be able to move over once the office space is officially complete. I'm waiting to hear back from facilities and construction around what the time frame is going to be for that move and what the scheduling is going to be, since there are several offices that will need to, not to mention the variant and the return to office just in general. I also wanted to give you all an update about commissioner outreach. In the next few weeks, you will hopefully see us putting some stuff up and reaching out to community members. We've also had folks reach out to us, but we have several vacant seats. And so we will be in the process of putting back together just a small group to help us interview and kind of screen and take in information with the different appointing authorities, the mayor's office and council and co-chairs, so we can look at filling the vacant seats. And so I hope that current commissioners will also help us get the word out that there are vacancies and that we're hoping to be able to recruit new commissioners. Also wanted to mention that the first assessment section from the monitor was sent around for the series of community engagement series that we'll be doing in conjunction with the monitoring team. So the next meeting will be, and Felicia will talk about it a little bit more, but will be next Tuesday. But the first section for crisis intervention will be sent around, and it will be up on the monitor's website as well too for community input and feedback. We're looking forward to as many people joining those and participating as possible. Felicia sent around, as Newell mentioned earlier, the invitation to the varying series and the different topics that we'll be going over from now until March. The next big work product to come out of the office outside of the various work group products is the drafting of, with the help of you all, our 2022 work plan will begin soon. And then finally, one of the work groups that we were tasked to carry out, that we were tasked to do by the City Council Resolution 31753. It was a resolution that required us to convene a stakeholder work group to discuss the creation of complainant appeals process for disciplinary cases arising from police misconduct. we were able to, staff and Commissioner Walden, we were able to meet during the holidays and talk about what are going to be possible next steps to get that work group up and going. And so we know that this work will require a lot of community involvement to be carried out successfully. So in the next few weeks, we'll begin a process of developing the work group, but we're going to be looking for folks from the community to actually join in helping us do this work. We're still working out the finer details of how the work group will typically operate, but we want to begin to announce the opportunity to join this work group publicly. So if there's any community member that's listening in now or sees the recording and that's interested in joining this work group, we would really love for you to reach out to us to learn more. And you can reach out to myself or Nia Franco, who oversees our work groups, or you can send an email to ocpc@seattle.gov just with your contact information about participating in the Complainant Appeals work group. And then other than that, those are all the updates that I have for today.
That's a great update. Thanks, Brandy. Alina, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Brandy, how many open vacancies are there?
There are 4, if I'm not mistaken.
And I talked to Douglas about this a little bit yesterday, but I think this is like just a broader conversation that I don't think we have time for today, but something I think is important to think about as vacancies come up. I think one, it is a privilege to be able to volunteer your time to serve as a commissioner. And I know some folks might get stipends to participate as well, but I feel like my experience of the commission, and this is including myself, is that a lot of us as commissioners do such incredible work and have full-time jobs and are stretching ourselves in all of these different directions, that I feel like, at least for me, keep me from being fully able to participate and give to the commission in the way that I want. And I think that historically the commission has been set up with people that that have a lot of responsibility outside of the commission. And I'm curious to have a conversation at some point about capacity for new commissioners. Like, I'm interested in, I would love to see new commissioners that maybe historically don't have access to tables like these, maybe because this is such a silly statement, but like, you're not an executive director, or your name is not known by this council person or whatever. Like, I'm interested in having folks that are deep in community, that are doing really hard work, that don't have access to tables like these, for those to be commissioners. I mean, I think the fact that we couldn't have quorum today speaks to the point I'm trying to make of, like, people are in positions that take up a lot of time. And I'm saying this for myself included. And so I don't know, I think it would be an important conversation to have about expectations. What's the capacity of current commissioners? What are we asking new commissioners to come on and do? Because honestly, I think if I wanted to fully show up the way that I want to, I would work for the CPC because there's that much work, right? So I think it's a broader conversation to have. And I know that we don't control everybody who's appointed, but I think that that's a conversation to have with the city council and with the mayor's office around appointees of, like, hey, it's great that you want to appoint people that have name recognition or that are doing all this great work, but what are the relationships with, like, everyday community members that are doing incredible things that actually have capacity to show up? So I just wanted to make that kind of a statement that I hope that we can have a discussion around at some point.
Yeah, agreed, Eileen. I think every point that you raised is valid and pertinent, and definitely something for us to all consider. As a former commissioner too, and once upon a time, I luckily just happened to, at the time, work for somewhere that helped me prioritize the work of the commission, but I couldn't say that that would have always been the case had I stayed in that role, because obviously we have other priorities and things to do. And I appreciate everything that everyone has done so far. But yes, capacity, accessibility, all of those things are things that we definitely need to consider. And I think, like you said, it's a conversation to have with the other appointing authorities too, so we're all on the same page. And commitment, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, Reverend Walden, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I think Alina, but also just to note that this is the third time since 2013 that we did not have a quorum. So I mean, we've had people to be coming, and so I think that's really to note. But also the way, I mean, it just took. I think too that as I step off, and the history will be gone, and some people will be glad. But I think that the amount of work that it took to bring the DOJ to town to be able to set this up, I took all of those people who had been doing the work in the community all of those years to be able to do that. I mean, it was those named people that say that signed the letter of 34 groups that have been working in the community. And it took an enormous amount of work to be able to get where we are today. And are we perfect? No, we're not. But you can the work. It's a lot of work. I mean, because it's about lives. It's about human beings and stuff like that. So I really appreciate what Elena has to say. And I don't know if people get a proper outline because don't nobody know what's going to be coming up. I mean, last year we didn't expect to chop. I mean, you have all these other things that come up that that's unexpected. So even though you try to lay it out, it's just not perfect. And we just have to keep at it. And I really appreciate that conversation because, like I say, my time here is will be gone, and it won't be no history or anything to be able to jump in and that and stuff like that. So anyway, as probably by February, not maybe sooner, whenever the new the mayor decides to appoint new people and stuff like that. So anyway, and it's been a privilege to be here all of these times. And out of all this, I've only missed one meeting since 2013. So anyway, it is a commitment, and I want to thank everybody for. And Elena, you just really, I really like your point and how you bring it home. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alina. I don't think there's any new CPC business to discuss.
No.
And then the last section is work group updates. And we've heard from pieces from all of our work groups. So, we heard
except for engagement. I don't think I don't think the engagement gave their report. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll turn to the community engagement for an update. And then after that, if any of the other work groups have anything that we haven't heard that you want to share, but community engagement.
Good morning, and thank you, Douglas. Thank you, Reverend Walden, and everybody on the call. I'm really excited about the lineup and the direction that the community engagement team is going, especially working together with the monitor group directly and getting hands-on, in the moment conversations and comments, and just giving a broader perspective and insight on the work that SPD has done and the work that the monitoring team is looking for benchmarks, and the work that the CPC has done to maneuver all of that. So with all that being said, the next 3 meetings are crucial for the community to feel heard, be heard, and documented their concerns and their thoughts and their outlook on the direction of CPC with to the monitor. I put out the emails. I'm still working on putting out, like on my Facebook page, on my personal Nextdoor page, on my personal email. So, and I'm asking you all to do the same. If you would please just take a moment to take the notice for the meeting coming up on January 11th. And as mentioned earlier, it'll be the first monitor's assessment report out on the crisis intervention. The next will be the next will be stop and detention. And we'll hear from Lisa Judge and hear from some of the others who have worked around these points. And then the last piece is use of force with supervision intertwined within all of that. I'm urging the SPD to put the message out to their advisory councils and their community email lists that they have. And I just can't stress enough, we got to get the word out there. People don't know what they don't know. And we can't just keep twirling around in the same circles. So let's open up the door and the windows and get people to this meeting so they could really understand and see what's the work that we're all doing. I mean, you guys do an amazing job. And I just want to thank Executive Director Grant's leadership in allowing my visions to come into fruition in the direction I'm wanting CPC. I see CPC going along with everybody's input and voice. So thank you all. I look for you. I look for all your support. Commissioners, I'm depending on you to help get the word out far and wide, and let's do this.
Thanks, Felicia. We appreciate you. And thanks for that update. Brandy's reminding me that just to flag for everyone that there's an upcoming strategic plan draft review that the Strategic Planning Committee is doing with Connected Realities, and that's happening January 13th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. I'm assuming that's like open to anyone who'd like to attend on the commission. So if you're not a part of that, but would like to tune in, just reach out to Brandy or myself and we'll get you the information. And let's see. And I think that wraps up our agenda. So I'll turn it over to Brandy to close this out.
Absolutely. For you all that are already a part of that strategic planning committee, invitations were already sent. And then we also made sure that invitations went out to folks that did a lot of work by participating in the workshops and focus groups and things of that nature. So again, if you haven't got it, like Douglas said, and you want to attend, reach out and let us know. And then for those of you that have received it, please make sure that you RSVP so we have an idea of who all will be in attendance, so they'll know how to structure the agenda for that day. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, like Reverend Walden mentioned earlier, apologize about the quorum, but there were some very good discussions. And as always, I always feel like the dialogue and being able to have discussion is equally important as being able to move the work. And there's some things that are out of our control and out of our hands, but I'm hoping to see and feel a sense of renewal from everyone, as well as myself. I hope I'm also projecting that same energy. We're in a new year. It's a new day for all of us. There's still plenty of work that needs to be done. And I hope you all still feel encouraged to do that work. Happy New Year, everyone. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.